who really knew Gandalf's secret? The Fellowship stumbles out of darkness, heartbroken and afraid. Behind them, Moria's shadows swallow their guide. Gandalf is gone. But here's what no one says. As they mourn, do any of them truly grasp who they've lost? Because most of them, Frodo, Sam, Boromir, believe they've lost a friend, a wizard, maybe even a father figure. But the truth is more astonishing. They've just watched a being older than the mountains vanish into myth. Truth is, only 3 in all of Middle-earth held the secret. Their silence would shape the fate of the ring and the world. So, who really knew Gandalf's secret? And why did it matter so much?
Think about Sam, holding Frodo as they stumble into the daylight. His grief raw and completely human. To him, Gandalf was the old wizard who made fireworks dance in the night and told stories by the fire. What if that spark in Gandalf's eye wasn't just playfulness, but the glow of ancient light, the same light that shone before the first sunrise? Aragorn once said, "Gandalf is greater than you Shire folk know. As a rule, you can only see his jokes and toys. But this business of ours will be his greatest task." And when Legolas saw the wizard's staff burn with white fire, did he recognize something from the oldest elf songs? The truth cuts to the heart of every friendship in Tolkien's story. Because the word that reveals who Gandalf really is never appears in The Lord of the Rings. Not once.
There was a secret at the heart of Middle-earth that slipped past every reader. A secret so well hidden that only a few of the wisest ever saw it. To find this hidden truth, we need to go back, not just to the Shire, but to the very beginning. To when Middle-earth was young and secrets walked openly. Picture the shores of Middle-earth around the year 1000 of the Third Age. 5 figures arrive, looking like old men worn down by travel, carrying simple walking sticks. Anyone watching would think they were wandering teachers or hermits seeking wisdom. This was no accident. Tolkien later explained their nature in a letter. Nowhere is the place or nature of the wizards made fully explicit. It appears, finally, that they were the near equivalent in the mode of these tales of angels. These were the Istari, the wizards, and their arrival was one of the greatest tricks in Middle-earth's history. But this wasn't a cruel trick. It came from wisdom and need. Tolkien tells us these 5 weren't men at all, but Maiar, immortal spirits who had lived in the Blessed Realm since before the world was made. The wizards weren't meant to look like old men, but were spirits like the Valar, only less powerful. They were the same type of being as Sauron himself, but completely different in heart and purpose. 2 flames from the same fire, one burning for hope, the other for power. But here's what matters most. They came to Middle-earth with strict rules. The Valar had learned hard lessons from fighting before. When they had made war directly on Morgoth, they had broken the world itself. This time would be different. The wizards were given bodies that aged and could be hurt. They felt hunger, tiredness, even doubt. Most importantly, they couldn't reveal who they really were or fight Sauron with their full power. Their job was to guide and inspire the free peoples, not rule them. This disguise worked for many reasons. It kept the wizards safe from wanting to use their full power, a want that had already corrupted Saruman and led one of the blue wizards astray. It also meant that any victory over evil would come from the courage of Middle-earth's people, not from divine help. But for our story, the most important thing is this. Only the wisest and oldest beings in Middle-earth knew their true nature. The wizards themselves were told to keep this secret. So Gandalf walked among Middle-earth's peoples for over 2,000 years, bringing hope to the Shire, advising kings in Gondor, standing guard against darkness, while his true identity stayed one of the age's best-kept secrets. But among all who knew him, who guessed the truth, who loved him as a friend and respected him as a guide, How many ever saw the immortal fire burning inside that weathered body? If knowing the truth could change everything, why hide it? The answer lies in uncovering Middle-earth's greatest disguise. Start with Bilbo's eyes. Picture him opening his door to find Gandalf's familiar silhouette. The pointed hat casting shadows, that staff scraping against the doorframe. What does Bilbo see? A friend. Someone who remembers birthdays and makes fireworks bloom like flowers in the night sky. Someone who fits perfectly into the Shire's gentle rhythms, who makes smoke rings dance and sits comfortably by a hobbit hole fire. This is no accident. Gandalf becomes exactly what the hobbits need him to be. Wonderful, yes, but safely wonderful. When he grows stern with Bilbo over the ring, it's the authority of a grandfather, not the terrible weight of a being who watched the first stars kindle. Follow Sam through the entire quest. Watch him witness Gandalf fall into shadow at Khazad-dûm. See him encounter the White Wizard blazing with power in Fangorn. How does he react? Gandalf, I thought you were dead. But then I thought I was dead myself. Is everything sad going to come untrue? What's happened to the world? Joy, relief, wonder. But no cosmic recognition. No sudden understanding that he's speaking to an immortal spirit older than the sun. And here's the crucial question. Would Sam's love have been the same? Would any hobbit have shown the same natural courage if they'd known they were taking counsel from one of the powers of the world? Sometimes, innocence is a shield as much as a blindness. The hobbits love Gandalf purely because they love him simply. Their ignorance isn't a flaw. It's the foundation of everything that follows. But that's only the beginning of what the rest of Middle-earth saw, or failed to see. But step outside the Shire, and the picture grows more complex. Boromir sees a wise counselor, perhaps the wisest he's ever known, but still just a man. He respects Gandalf's authority, but it is the wisdom of a learned leader, not the presence of an immortal. Aragorn senses the depths in Gandalf, but even he cannot define them. He's lived among the wise, steeped in ancient lore. But when it comes to Gandalf's true nature, he remains a watcher at the edge of the mystery, intuitive, respectful, but never fully knowing. Aragorn's trust is instinctive. He follows Gandalf not because of titles or power, but because he recognizes greatness that can't be measured or named. Denethor, steward of Gondor, comes closest among men to glimpsing the truth. His pride makes him wary of Gandalf's influence, but even his hostility is tinged with a kind of fear, a fear that hints at forces beyond his understanding. Denethor rails against the Grey Fool, but beneath the insult is the anxiety of a man who senses he is outmatched in ways he cannot explain. Théoden, freed from Saruman's shadow, greets Gandalf with something approaching awe, but his reverence is for a figure of legend, a master of wisdom and words, not for an immortal spirit who watched the world's beginning. So it is with men in Middle-earth. Suspicion lingers, wonder grows, but certainty remains out of reach. They move in the presence of greatness, sensing its weight, but the true depths remain forever just beyond their grasp. Now watch Gimli throughout the quest. His respect for Gandalf grows with every deed witnessed. The courage in Moria, the wisdom in council, the power against enemies. But here's what's telling. Gimli never asks what Gandalf is, only whether he can be trusted. To a dwarf's practical mind, actions matter more than ancestry. Gandalf has proven himself with axe and deed, and that's enough. But this leaves us with the most intriguing question of all. What about Legolas? Of everyone in the Fellowship, the elf should be the most likely to pierce Gandalf's disguise. Elves possess memories stretching back thousands of years. They know of the Valar, the Maiar, the great spirits that shape the world. Some, like Elrond and Galadriel, had even walked in the light of the two trees and fought beside the powers themselves. When Legolas sees Gandalf transformed in Fangorn, with power blazing from that once familiar figure, surely he must sense something from the oldest songs. He's the first to cry out, "Mithrandir! Mithrandir!" Is this elven sight piercing ancient veils, or simply keen observation? Here's the crucial detail. Even if Legolas suspected the truth, he never speaks it aloud, not once. His silence could be wisdom, respect for Gandalf's chosen disguise. Or it could mean that, even for the immortal, some mysteries are too deep to name. If even the elves, with all their ancient knowledge, remained in the dark, then who in Middle-earth could possibly know the truth? The answer brings us to one of the world's most carefully guarded secrets, kept by only 3. Tolkien gives us the answer in Unfinished Tales. None save maybe Elrond, Círdan, and Galadriel discovered of what kind they were or whence they came. Only these 3, the greatest of the wise, recognized Gandalf's true nature and mission. They alone were present when the Istari first arrived in Middle-earth. They alone were ancient and wise enough to see past the disguise, beings who had fought Morgoth, walked in the light of the two trees, and survived the ruin of ages. For over 2,000 years, Elrond, Galadriel, and Círdan maintained a conspiracy of silence. Sometimes, knowing too much changes the fate of the world, and the story you thought you knew. Now picture the Council of Elrond with this knowledge. Elrond presides over debates about the fate of the ring, listening to arguments from all the free peoples, and sitting beside him, offering counsel as Gandalf the Grey, is a Maiar, one of the Holy Ones, a spirit from before the world's beginning. Elrond knows this. He knows the room holds not just a wise wizard, but a being of the ancient order of creation itself. Yet he says nothing. The disguise is maintained, the secret preserved. Why? Because the moment Gandalf's companions understood they traveled with a Maiar, everything would change. Decisions would be deferred to him. Courage might become dependence. And victory over evil would belong not to the free peoples, but to the powers of the West. The conspiracy of silence wasn't just about keeping a secret. It was about preserving the very possibility of hope. Without that silence, the world's last hope might never have been born. And this leads us to the most remarkable revelation of all. Now, at last, we arrive at the secret kept behind 1,000 veils, hidden in the hush of ancient halls and in the silent awe of star-filled skies. Gandalf, this humble, pipe-smoking wanderer, this friend of hobbits and architect of hope, was not merely a wizard, not merely a wise old man guiding the lost through the darkness. He was Olorin, a Maiar, one of the Ainur. Think about what this means. That gentle figure teaching Bilbo smoke ring tricks. He heard the world's first music before the mountains were born. He helped shape the cosmos with the harmonies of creation, his spirit tracing the original lines of beauty and suffering. That wizard sharing stories by the fire in Bag End. He walked in the gardens of the Blessed Realm, learned mercy from Nienna herself, and chose to leave paradise behind and return, willingly diminished, to the dusk and pain of Middle-earth. But here's Tolkien's masterstroke. He hid this truth not just from the characters, but from us. Search all 600 pages of The Lord of the Rings. The word Maiar never appears, not once. Even as the world is remade in the fire of the ring, the mask is never fully lifted. This isn't an oversight, it's genius. Wayne Hammond and Christina Scull call it an air of wonder and ambiguity. But it's something deeper, an invitation to marvel, to live with mystery, to cherish the quiet grandeur that exists beyond our naming. Because Tolkien wanted us to know Gandalf as his friends knew him, through acts of daily kindness, not cosmic credentials. We see him not as a divine equation, but as someone who chooses to make joy out of fireworks on a summer night, who listens more than he speaks, who believes more in the small than the mighty. But the truth changes everything. Michael Drought writes that Tolkien's genius was to operate on multiple planes of knowledge. The characters know one thing, the reader another, the world itself something deeper still. And now we see it. Gandalf's concealed identity isn't a riddle to be solved, but a window through which we glimpse the grandeur of all hidden things. Now reread every scene with this knowledge burning in your mind. Every time Gandalf sits in Bag End, savoring his pipe, he's not just a wizard among friends. He's an ancient spirit of light, finding meaning in the warmth of a hobbit's hearth. When he stands on the bridge at Khazad Dûm, defying the Balrog, it's not just courage, it's sacrifice at the deepest level. A being who helped sing the stars into existence, willingly facing oblivion for the fleeting salvation of mortals. And here's what makes it even more profound. Tolkien confirmed the reality of that sacrifice in a private letter. Gandalf really died and was changed. So Gandalf sacrificed himself, was accepted and enhanced and returned. Gandalf's incarnation was real. He felt hunger, weariness, doubt. He could die. When Tolkien says he really died at Moria, he means it. This wasn't an immortal playing at mortality. This was divinity choosing to be genuinely vulnerable, genuinely afraid, genuinely human. Elrond, Galadriel, and Círdan kept this secret not from cruelty, but from love. They understood that Gandalf's greatness lay not in the power he possessed, but in the humility he embraced. He chose to guide, not to rule, to become small so others could become great. The greatest secret isn't what Gandalf was. It's the undying light he chose to kindle, again and again, in the hearts of those who followed him. Why does any of this matter? Why should the hidden identity of a wandering wizard echo so powerfully across the ages of story and soul? Because, in Tolkien's world, the truest acts of courage are not born of certainty, but of trust. Imagine the Fellowship, broken, battered, and afraid, rising to greatness, not because they marched behind a god, but because they chose, again and again, to follow a friend. Had they known Gandalf as Maiar, as architect of stars, would their loyalty have been so freely given? Would Sam have found the courage to take one more step on the slopes of Mount Doom? Or would Aragorn have grown into the king he was meant to be? The answer, Tolkien seems to whisper, is no. The secret preserved the dignity of mortal choice, the trembling bravery of hearts that leap without knowing, the heroism of hands held in darkness. But beneath this, a deeper wonder flows. In Middle-earth, as in our own world, identity is never the whole of a person. Destiny is made not from origins, but from choices. Gandalf and Sauron, cut from the same cloth of creation, become opposites not because of what they are, but because of what they love and serve. And so Tolkien's greatest magic is not to reveal, but to invite us to marvel, to remind us, as Verlin Flieger writes, that it is not always knowledge, but the experience of wonder that is paramount. Gandalf is known and unknown, at home in the humble and the epic, his greatness flickering just beyond the grasp of understanding. This is the mystery at the heart of Tolkien's faith, too, that the sacred moves quietly among us, its presence felt in humility and hope more than in thunder or triumph. The true miracles are often unannounced. A teacher who sees you, a friend who stands by you at the crossroads, a stranger whose kindness rethreads the needle of your day. Their nature is hidden, but their gifts are real. So perhaps we are not meant to know every secret or name every source of light. Perhaps the truest magic is not in seeing through every disguise, but in learning to cherish what shines through. The next time you meet Gandalf on the page, notice the flash in his eye, the hush that falls when he speaks, the spark of something ancient beneath the ordinary. Notice how Tolkien never breaks the spell, never quite tells us everything. Because maybe in the end, the stories that change us most are the ones that leave us with questions. Stories that teach us to honor mystery, to love what we cannot fully understand. Sometimes the deepest wisdom is not in knowing, but in wondering well. Sometimes the brightest light is that which slips, quietly, through the cracks of our certainty, asking only that we look and keep looking, and let ourselves be changed.